Hello all, welcome to the class. In today's class, we're going to study about sedition law. Sedition law has been in news over a period of time, and lot of concerns are associated with this sedition law. In the past also and currently also, this has become one of the hot topics to discuss. So let us start discussing about this sedition law. Within sedition law, what is all more important is to understand that what is actually section 124A of the Indian Penal Code, right? And also why and what is this sedition law? What is the significance of sedition law? And all the related issues with the sedition law is something very important. Why this sedition law is back in news? Senior advocate Kapil Sibal, he quoted statements made by Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru on section 124A, that is related to your sedition law, and said that he wants the provision to be struck down because there are some serious concerns that are associated with this sedition law. So let us just discuss about this sedition law. Now the government, all the more time there have been proposals, that this particular section, this is something not appropriate and it needs to be struck down. And every time you see the government keeps on asking for more time so that it can submit its written response to petitions which are challenging the constitutional validity, right, of section 124A of Indian Penal Code. We'll talk about the year 2021. It was Chief Justice of India. Okay, he questioned, the question was that why a colonial law used against Mahatma Gandhi and Bal Gangadhar Tilak, it continues to be surviving in the today's time. We are already 75 years of independence, right? And why is this particular kind of law still in the country? So something that becomes outdated, what we want the thing to be changed, right? That is why we have constitutional amendments. Why constitutional amendment happens, why repealing of laws happen, is because something that is becoming outdated. And right now, even after so many years of independence, we see the sedition law to be, continuing to be with us. So the Chief Justice had said that sedition or section 124A of the Indian Penal Code was prone to misuse by the government, and definitely several instances you will find that where it was proven that government is actually misusing this section 124A of the Indian Penal Code, right? But there are certain concerns that are there from the government sides, that government says, see, whether it's right or wrong, the basic thing is that we require sedition law because there are certain concerns associated with it, and to maintain the sanctity of the constitution only, sedition law is still present. So what is sedition law? Sedition law, it is said to be used indiscriminately among anybody who starts criticizing the government or its policies, right? Now, this particular law is said to be used against the critics, the journalists, the social media users, activists, and citizens, right? If they want to give out their grievances against the government, like, this was not the correct way, the way COVID-19 was managed in the country, there could have been things better. And, anything related to that. Even during the second wave of pandemic, we could find more number of such cases coming up. That this particular section, if I define it in simple terms, this says that whoever by words, and these words either they are spoken or they are written over here, your social media sites are also included, right, brings or attempts to bring into hatred or contempt, or excites or attempts to excite dissatisfaction towards the government established by law and shall be punished with imprisonment for life, right? So if anything, any derogatory comment against the government, then you will be definitely punished for that, right? And imprisonment can be up to 3 years or for lifetime also. And we see that this particular sedition law, the critics argue that, this section 124A, what is the meaning of democracy? We talk about democracy, we talk about a democratic government, we talk about that we are building up a democracy, we are the largest democracy in the world, and still this kind of laws, if they are prevalent, where is my right to freedom of speech and expression that my constitution guarantees me, that this particular thing is my fundamental right? Article 19 of the Indian Constitution clearly states that I have the freedom of speech and expression. Now, even if I just come up and I just say that government, this particular government, and this was a particular minister, or if anything against the prime minister, this was not valid. And even though my comments are not derogatory, but I am speaking something against the government, that means what is happening is government is trying to suppress the voice of the people, right? And if these things continues to happen in any kind of democracy, then please, sorry, we are not a democracy anymore. Because if the rights of the people are going to be taken, then we are running not towards a democracy but something else, a different form of government, where we find that there will be one party ruling and the people will not be allowed to speak. Now there are a lot of issues also surrounding its misuse. So it is a big controversy, and you will find that for too long this controversy has been going. And government, they have been criticized that why are you using this section 124A of the Indian Penal Code against the vocal critiques of their policies. So this section is seen as a restriction of individuals' freedom of expression that we just talked about, right? And the law has been in debate ever since it was brought into force by the colonial British rulers in 1860s. And you will see that several top leaders who were the part of a freedom movement, Gandhi, Nehru, they were booked under the sedition law. If I talk about some relevant judgments that are associated with it, see, so one is your case of 1995 and the other is the case of 1962. 1995, this is the case of Balwant Singh versus State of Punjab case. In this particular case, what happened was that Supreme Court made a justification, a clarification, that any kind of slogans that people shout, right? Like shouting slogans, that is, in that particular case, it was the Khalistan Zindabad. This does not amount to any kind of sedition. It's mere a slogan, right? So evidently what was found that sedition law is being both misunderstood and misused to muzzle the dissent. Other very important case, that is the case of 1962. This case is famously known as Kedar Nath Singh versus State of Bihar. So a 5-judge Supreme Court constitutional bench at that time, in the Kedar Nath versus State of Bihar case, they laid down some guiding principles. They ruled that comments, however strongly worded, expressing disproportion of the actions of the government without causing public disorders by act of violence would not be penalized, right? So see, there is a definitely the Supreme Court has always come up with one particular thing, that violations are there definitely, but if that kind of violation is something like giving your opinion, expressing that disagreement, it should not amount to sedition, right? So this comes near to the particular point that my freedom of speech and expression is very, very important, and that should not be taken away by the government. So prominent leaders that we just discussed, Mahatma Gandhi, Nehru. Another very prominent leader who was tried as sedition was Lokmanya Tilak. And for this, he was tried for sedition 3 times and imprisoned at least twice. So in 1897, he was charged with seditions, right, for exciting the feeling of dissatisfaction against the government. And Gandhi was back in 1922. He was charged with sedition. Why? Because he wrote some articles in the weekly journal that he used to write, Young India, and he was charged with this sedition. Now, we have discussed about the sedition law, some prominent leaders. See, this sedition law has its roots from the British times, colonial government times. And the question over here is, even though government justifies this particular law, that why sedition law is required by giving a lot of reasons, that this reason is correct or this particular reason is correct, right? But the very important thing is that if the right of the people is taken away, the freedom of speech and expression, then we are not running towards a democracy. There is a problem in it. So what is the way forward? So section 124A of the IPC that we just talked about, IPC, has its utility basically in combating anti-national secession and terrorist elements. Definitely, if something very big is going in the country and it can hamper the stability of the government, it is justified. But anything like any criticism of the government, any kind of dissent by the people should not be constructed as sedition. So the higher judiciary should use its supervisory powers to sensitize the magistracy and police to the constitutional provisions protecting free speech. If you are using a law to actually mum the people, stop them from speaking, then this is not correct. So the clear thing is that a line has to be drawn where this can be utilized and not. So with this, we end the class here. Thank you so much.